trust, but I can tell you really want to cut right through this. Yeah, right through this. Cause no one knows just what to make of this ball of dust that we're living on. One thing I can trust, but I
It's going nuts. I don't know what's happening.
What?
Hold on.
can trust, but I can tell you really want to cut right through this. Yeah, right through this. Cause no one knows just what to make of this ball of dust that we're living on. One thing I know is that everyone will get hurt. So before we're gone, let's do this. Let's do this before the heavens have crashed to the ground. Let's do this. Let's do this before we're silent. Let's make such a sound. Oh, let's do this.
I just love live. I don't think it's ever gone properly since we've started this ever. Thank you to those of you who are watching. And we are here today with a entertainment lawyer, director, composer, and a bunch of other things that he does.
Whatever. Yeah, I forget.
Chris Edgar. So we are here to answer your questions. This half hour is for you. So if you're here, put your comments in the chat. I'm trying to man them to the side in case they don't pop up over here for us. In the meantime, Chris, can you let us know about Film Tracts?
Film Tracts is an application. Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. This is going to be fun. I always enjoy these Ask a Lawyer segments, and hopefully I'll be able to help a bunch of people with their entertainment law questions today. But yes, Film Tracts is the name of both an app that I've created and a YouTube channel that I've started. The app allows people to, by filling out a pretty simple form, create contracts for their independent film projects. And you can do that by either kind of buying contracts a la carte. So you can create a free account and then you can pay by the contract, or you can get a monthly subscription. It's a lot like it's like some of the sites out there like LegalZoom and so forth that allow you to create other types of contracts, like employment contracts and things of that nature. But it's focused specifically on independent film, and there doesn't seem to be anything else quite like that out there. So if you're looking for an affordable way to create contracts for your indie film project that doesn't cost $500 an hour or whatever to pay an attorney, and you don't want to look for random contracts on Google, then I would suggest taking a look at this.
Okay, so I'm not completely sure if the channels are working. So if you are watching us live, can you pop something in the chat for us and make sure we're seeing you? I'm getting an error on one and the other one looks okay. While we wait, Stephen B has questions.
I can see it on YouTube.
Okay, great. Is there anything that's come up for you in this last month where you've had to deal with something that maybe has been new to you, or is there something that keeps coming up from filmmakers all the time?
Or if people just have random questions about AI and copyright, because that's
like
you, of the questions.
Is something come up for you recently? Because we don't know or while we wait for questions, you might as well let me know what are you getting a lot of lately, or have you gotten something new and interesting that you have had to deal with film wise, legal wise?
Let's see. What have I been dealing with recently? I've been helping some people with distribution. That's one of the things that I do. And one issue actually that's come up recently, and this is not really a new issue, this is a problem that I think a lot of indie filmmakers will be familiar with, is that when you want to get your film distributed, you need to make sure not only that all of the actors and all of the crew and so forth have a contract, but also that there is a contract that clearly assigns to the production company the right to make a film based on the script. So that's something that's going to be assigned by the screenwriter. Occasionally, people will have a contract. Well, sometimes they'll have no contract, and of course, that's not what you want. But sometimes they'll also have a contract that assigns the right to make a film based on the script to the director individually or something like that. So before they started a company. but that right needs to be assigned to the production company. This is the kind of thing that a distributor is going to focus on, because they obsessively focus on what's called the chain of title. That is making sure that the paperwork clearly indicates who owns the IP associated with the film, which in this case is the copyright in the script.
Now, there's so many things that you just don't even think about when you're doing these film things. Paper trail, paper trail, paper trail. Anything else that's been a pretty typical thing that filmmakers tend to ask you about or have issues with?
I mean, there's this issue that always comes up over whether, do I need to set up an LLC? Do I need to set up a separate production company? Or is it just going to be too much of a hassle, particularly if I'm in a state like California where I have to pay a franchise tax? And generally, I would say yes. I mean, particularly if you're working on a feature film, because what that does is it protects you from any kind of individual liability that might come up based on your film, at least when it comes to people claiming that they weren't paid adequately or something like that. So
I think also the point is you have to do the LLC under the film title or something. Like, you don't want to put that under your own production company, right? Like, you want to set up a separate LLC. If it's a feature, it's a different thing. But if it's a feature, you want to have an LLC for that film as long as it's out in the world.
Yeah, and then you can sell units, which is basically the equivalent of shares for a limited liability company. Like, you can say, if you contribute $1 million to the film, then you can own 20% of the LLC, or something of that nature.
I wonder if you have to do it in California, because I think that's a big deterrent, is that $800 a year just to have an LLC. And when you can do it in like Wyoming for something like $60 a year.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is that California, if they find that you have engaged in taxable activity in the state, are still going to require you to pay the franchise tax. So if you're going to shoot in LA, then then you may run into that problem. If you're shooting outside of California, then that shouldn't be an issue. And it might be that Wyoming is going to be more liberal about it. Even if you're not going to shoot in Wyoming, you might be able to have a Wyoming LLC, which is probably the state where it's there. I think the reason that Jen is talking about Wyoming is because it's the easiest state to set up an LLC. You don't have to even wait for approval from the Secretary of State. You just kind of fill out a form on the web, and bang, the articles of incorporation pop up. They're just filed.
Done. Yay. Yeah, California will always try to get their money somehow. I want to remind everybody, if you are here listening and you have questions of any kind, put them in the chat. We will do our best to answer them.
And actually, that brings up another issue. I also have had an issue recently that I should report to people who are starting companies associated with their film right now. There's a bit of a backlog in California, something like 2 weeks. So if you need to set up a bank account immediately, then you could consider filing in another state. If you're not going to be shooting in LA, if you're doing it in California, you probably do have to create a California corporation or a California LLC. But there are also the options of getting expedited service, which of course you can pay more for, and then it's not going to take 2 weeks. I guess this is like a backlog that built up during COVID. I used to get, basically same day service when I would file LLC articles of organization with the California Secretary of State. But these days it seems like they're backed up.
How early are people protecting themselves and their project in particular? Like, if the writer has a script, they get a copyright from the government. But now, say, the production company is going to start pitching it around. I guess it's at the point where they should get their LLC formed.
Yeah, ideally, I mean, because then you can tell potential investors, like if you're looking for financing, we have this LLC that you can write a check to, and they can feel more comfortable, I think, writing a check to a production company than they would in writing it to some individual or writing it to the umbrella production company.
I mean, but if it's just about checks and banks, you can do a DBA. So if we're talking protections, can you wait longer? Can you wait until you actually have, okay, we definitely have money coming in. We're definitely going to make this movie. Now let's get the LLC.
Well, again, it's the issue of liability protection. Like, if you want to protect yourself from individual liability, then I wouldn't recommend accepting funds from investors as a sole proprietor, in case they're going to claim later, but because the film didn't make the profit that they wanted, now I'm going to try to find a way to get my money back, and I'm going to claim that you defrauded me. I mean, this is like one of the worst case scenarios, right? But unfortunately, I have seen it. So you want that claim to be made, or some other claim for a refund to be made against the company, if possible, rather than against you personally.
American Dreamer Media has a question. What if principal shooting happens outside California, but post-production happens in California? Say 75% of outside of the state, 25% in the state. And hi.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, when it gets down to that specific level of detail, then I would definitely talk to your tax accountant about whether, in their experience, the state is likely to come after you in that situation. Uh, because I mean, for legal purposes, I mean, they'll be looking at whether there were predominantly activities in California. But the devil is in the details. So it'll be important to talk to your accountant to see whether California is likely to come after you for the franchise tax. If you're talking about, a multi-million-dollar movie, then paying the $800 franchise tax is going to be the least of your worries.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's when people are just talking about they're talking about smaller productions and short films and stuff like that. Like, is that worth it to pay the $800 franchise tax? If it's a giant film, then yeah.
I think most of our audience are probably doing, we're talking about $250,000 to $1 million budgets.
Yeah.
And I think that also shoot outside of California, but if you're doing all of the prep in California, California is always going to get their money one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, particularly if it's a big money production, I think there's tax revenue to be made. If it's a short film that was made for $5,000, then they're less likely to care. So unfortunately, the more bigger the budget, the more likely the state is to try to get money from you.
But also, if you're doing a short film, like, you don't get an LLC for a short film.
Yeah, usually that's true.
And Chris probably does because he's a crazy.
Yeah. I am doing that for my next short that's shooting next month.
He is a crazy person. He doesn't mind wasting all his money to the government. Let's see, what other questions? So, how does an entertainment lawyer differ from a manager or agent, more particular? Because obviously they always talk about an entertainment lawyer or an agent can negotiate fees for a director or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who act as entertainment lawyer and manager, and there are some managers who are entertainment lawyers, and some managers who are not. I mean, as far as the preparation of contracts, I mean, particularly when we're talking about productions with higher budgets, where you're negotiating with name talent and they want regulations in the contract on the size of the trailer or something like that. When you're getting down into, and when you have, complicated funding schemes and, 5 different classes of securities offering or something like that. That's not usually the kind of situation that a manager / lawyer, even if they have a law degree, is going to be experienced in. That's usually the kind of situation where you need to go to a law firm or you need to go to a solo practitioner with a lot of experience doing this kind of thing. Because that's more than just, negotiating a contract.
Right.
So yeah, there's some overlap, but I think the more technical and legal, or the more technically legal the situation gets, the more you're likely to want to get a separate entertainment lawyer.
I know a lot of writers who dropped their agents during that whole debacle who have entertainment lawyer and managers now. And I will tell you all, I send everything to Chris. Chris reads all contracts. And I didn't care if I had an agent or anybody else. Because I think entertainment lawyers especially or lawyers in general, have an eye for detail that's completely annoying, but very necessary.
That's why you pay us, to annoy you.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Do we really care about that one word? He's like, yes, we do. Does it matter if your entertainment attorney is in the same state as you or the same state as your project?
This is kind of a gray area that exists in entertainment law because, you usually do have, LA-based entertainment lawyers who are representing productions that are taking place outside of California or even outside of the United States. And if my view of it, just based on my experience, I mean, even though there's yet to be the case law that definitively resolves this issue, is that if you have some kind of nexus to California, like Jen was talking about, if you're doing your prep in California, but you're shooting in Mexico, then the lawyer is not going to have to worry about somebody coming after him and saying, "Oh, you weren't authorized to practice law outside of California." But that's really the concern of your lawyer mostly. I mean, that's not a concern that the production, if you're a filmmaker or the production company, you don't need to be worried about that. It's your lawyer who needs to be worried about the state bar coming after him and saying, if you're shooting something in Florida, you weren't authorized to practice in Florida, which in my experience, rarely ever happens.
And We have a question coming in from our Facebook group. Oh, look, there's a lot of questions in the Facebook group. We gotta
cool.
talk to Wave. They're not popping these in. Sorry, gang. Okay, let's get through these. Let's see. We've got Marlon. The Jordan Peele No Drama Contest had a release form that had a lot of legal jargon that pretty much stated if selected, you will receive the WGA minimum. What advice do you suggest for release forms?
I mean, it depends on what kind of provision you're talking about. If you're talking about a guarantee that you'll receive the WGA minimum, I guess the question is whether you think that that's enough. If you want to be receiving more money, I mean, although in the context of what sounds like a filmmaking contest or a script writing contest, usually you're not going to receive any money at all.
Well, and also, if it's a contest, you're not going to get them to change their jargon for you.
Yeah.
So you're basically have to decide, am I okay with this or am I not? Maybe you do run it by somebody like Chris and go, is there anything in here I should really, I did a lot. I'm like, Chris, is there anything here I should really worry about? And then he'll say, nah, blah, blah, blah. He'll make me feel better about signing this release. So that's always something that can help you ease your mind. One thing I always say to look out for releases, though, is do they own the content? Because if they own the rights or your content or your IP or anything by submitting, nah, no thank you. Not interested.
Right, that's true. Although usually, and usually you'll see something like you release us from possible copyright claims, which makes sense because they don't want people coming back and suing them for some reason because they showed a clip or something like that in their film festival or in their contest. Which, I mean, in my experience, barely ever happens, but there are some crazy people out there. But yeah, you don't want them to own the project.
Right.
That's certainly true.
Thomas, hi. Long time no see. Okay. He says, it took me this long. Oh, wait, sorry. I just directed my first feature. Congratulations.
Oh, great.
But I shot it in another country. I have so many questions, so I'll pick 2 or 3. Okay, let's see what we got. Talking about the LLC, should I form that LLC before shopping it around, or is it really not needed since I already shot it? He would want it, right? Because that should be the life of the film.
Yeah, I would definitely form the production company. And then what you'll need to do, if you haven't formed the company yet, is you're going to need to assign the rights under the existing contracts that I guess you individually have signed with the cast and crew and whoever else. You're going to want to assign those to the production company. That's going to be, it's going to be a good thing from the perspective of your distributor, who's going to want to make a deal with the production company and not with you individually, even if you're a solo proprietor, using a DBA. And also from the perspective of protecting you individually from liability, which we've talked about.
And the distributor, when we were working with the sales agent, they kept asking, who's the LLC? Who's the LLC? Yeah. And for our movie, I did not get an LLC on that movie. And I was just like, you're going to have to just pay my production company. But when you're shopping, I think Chris's whole thing about LLCs is the protection. So you don't have to get an LLC in California, because if the movie wasn't even shot here, get one in Wyoming or something. It's like $60 a year, because you're going to want it. Even when that film is streaming, you're going to always want to have an LLC protecting you from anybody trying to come back at you personally. He says, I will be in the process of drawing the contracts for my film in terms of production, assigning production points, percentages. Would you say I'm at the point of hiring a lawyer for that? Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that can get kind of complicated, because it's not just a matter of saying this or that person is going to get 2% of the back end or something like that, or 2% of the profits. Because in reality, what's going to happen is there's going to be this waterfall of payments of the profits that you get from the film. Like, you're going to have to pay off some deferments. If there was deferred pay, you're going to have to make a payment to the sales agent. You may need to make a payment to various guilds like SAG and IATSE and so on. And you need to have some kind of written scheme for the order in which those payments are going to be made. And this is usually made explicit in agreements where there's an assignment of profits. Also, and the definition of what profits are, or what so-called net profits are, can also get kind of complicated. So yeah, that is the kind of thing that I would recommend talking to a lawyer about.
And if someone wants to have a consultation with you to decide if they need to work with you, or to find out, for you to be able to understand their project, to know how to quote them, what should they prepare before that consultation so that you have all the information you need?
If there are documents that you want looked at, like if there's a specific contract that you want to get advice on that someone else has proposed to you or something like that, then you can forward that to me. If there isn't anything in writing yet, then I would just write down the questions that you want to ask, so that they're clear in your mind.
Okay, great. So these are great. Keep them coming, guys. We have about 10 minutes left in this. So for people who potentially are like, I want to have an entertainment lawyer help me. It's funny, we're talking a lot more about entertainment lawyers than we normally do, but I think and that's where this question even comes from. I think that a lot of people want to have an entertainment lawyer help them, but they're afraid it's going to cost them too much. So how do fee schedules work? Do you do a percentage of budget? Do you do per hour? Do you do flat fees for projects? How do you work?
I'll usually charge an hourly rate, but I mean, I'm not completely opposed to the idea of working for a percentage of the budget. I've done flat rates before. When I do a project with a flat rate, often I end up, those are the projects that end up being the most time consuming. So I'm kind of reluctant to do that. And I have a lot of other projects that I'm working on right now, well, as you know very well. So yeah, I wouldn't want to take on a flat rate project that ends up being, 200 hours right now. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about attorneys generally, yeah, that is an arrangement that you can theoretically enter into with an attorney.
There also could be a thing for you filmmakers watching that if you approach someone like Chris or whoever, you could say, I have this much money for a lawyer, and here's the 10 things we'll need or whatever. Like have a specific list so that then the lawyer can say, yes, I can do, I'll do these 6 things for you for that budget or whatever it is. Because I think that even as a filmmaker, I have to put that stuff in writing. I'm like, you're not going to come back to me for 16,000, edits or whatever. You're going to get this. This is specifically what you're going to get. Anything after that costs this much money. But I do, man, I will say I'm very lucky that Chris is my film partner because I don't know what I would do without an entertainment lawyer going through all my stuff, like looking over everything. Let's see. What are some other things? How do you communicate with your entertainment lawyer is another question that's come up. Do you just tend to work back and forth over email?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the preference of the client. We could talk on the phone a lot. We could email a lot. Some of them like to text. Whatever your preferred, communication medium is. Because we're going to be looking at, if we're drafting documents or negotiating documents, then we're going to be doing a lot over email because we're going to be looking at this current version of the document and what we want to do to it and so on.
I'd also assume that people should probably stick to email so that they're paying less, right? If you're not bothering you with long phone calls and.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, it really depends on the task that we're talking about. I mean, if I need to write a lengthy email to someone, then I'm going to have to bill for that too. I'm afraid. I haven't really looked into whether that tends to take longer than predominantly communicating by phone. But that's an interesting question.
Well, I'll tell you what. I do co-productions. I'm like the rate. I give you these rates because I don't have to talk to you on the phone. I'll email or I'll charge you more.
Yeah, if it's not a situation where someone urgently needs answers by email or something like that. If it means you can do it more on your own time schedule, yeah, that's a nice feature of email. It sounds like a nice reason to charge less, although I'm not sure whether, as a practical matter, it causes me to spend less time.
American Dreamer wants this. Chris, I see you have a music pedigree. We're having an issue getting music cleared for a popular music artist, so we want to recreate music from the artist with a cover band. Thoughts, legalities?
Well, I mean, if you're playing the exact song, then unfortunately, from the artist, then unfortunately, you're going to need a license for that. If you're doing something that's kind of in the style of the artist, that vaguely sounds like the artist, I mean, then I think you would have more breathing room.
I will tell you, there's been plenty of times where we can't have a song, and I go, Chris, can you make a song that sounds like this? And so we make it so it has the feeling and maybe a little bit of it, but it's not. Because getting right now we're still waiting. It's been like 3 months and we still haven't heard back on a song we're trying to get rights from. One song, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I also would say too, American Dreamer, one of the things I do the most is I go to indie bands. I love finding, I'll post out for like indie bands who have this sound or something like that, and try to find give more people a platform, get a song that you still love, but you don't have to pay the rights for. But there is the reason we want to pay rights for a short film and to pay rights for a song is because there's a cheat that happens when you play a song that audience already have a nostalgic feel for. So yeah, it's like making those choices. Let's see what else is in this list here. We have hiring. So I guess there's always a question around hiring and whether it should be W-2, 1099, all that. But I would say, what are the biggest thoughts you have on when you're hiring your cast and crew? Let's say if we're a short film, because most of our people watching do short films. What do you think is the most important things to consider when you're hiring?
Well, one thing I see,
not like, obviously you want them to not be assholes and you want them to be talented, but like legally speaking, what are the important things?
Well, a lot of people are out there making SAG micro-budget shorts, and it's great that there is this option to make a SAG micro-budget short where it's not, you don't have to deal with SAG regularly and you don't have to file all kinds of paperwork for them apart from just initially registering the project. But just remember that the micro-budget acknowledgement form that you get from SAG is not by itself a contract. It's a document that the actors who are working with you need to sign, but you'll also need to draft a contract yourself or have your attorney draft a contract. That shows, well, for instance, how much they're going to be paid and how many days they're going to be working, and all of the usual legal language about how this agreement covers everything and supersedes any negotiations and so on. That's something, a common issue that I see.
Let's see, we have about 3 minutes. If you guys have any burning questions, get them in. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going down this other list. So what do you do when it comes to, because we talked a lot about LLCs earlier and forming them for your film. So if you have an LLC for your film, and it's like, whatever, my film LLC. Yeah. And you have the owners of the film. Are they listed as owners of that LLC? And that are they still, it's still not really protecting them because their name is on it, right?
No, I mean, you can be publicly listed as the owner of an LLC and still your liability is going to be limited. Some people choose to have their sort of umbrella production company, which can be another LLC, own the LLCs that are associated with each of their individual films. This usually happens for feature films.
Yeah.
And then you get sort of a holding company, and then the individual who owns the production company owns the holding company. And that's sort of another layer of protection, you could say.
And then when you have the LLC for the film, well, assuming, I guess the next part of that is like, how do you know who owns what? Like, because you talked about shareholders would be part of the LLC and own part of that LLC. Yep. You have producers, you have crew that maybe got a percentage back end points. Yeah. That's why you hire a lawyer, I know. But like, is there a short version to help people understand how that all lays out?
So the people who own the LLC, that's going to be covered in the LLC's operating agreement. And this is the basic agreement between the owners of the LLC. It defines how the profits are going to be distributed among them. It defines how voting is going to occur on issues that are important to the LLC, and so on. A crew member who is getting back-end points, or in other words, they're getting a share of the profits from the film, they're not an owner of the LLC per se. They're just an owner of a part of the stream of profits that come from the film. You could theoretically offer someone an ownership interest in the LLC, but then you'd be giving them voting rights and stuff like that. I mean, I normally wouldn't recommend that unless it's an investor. You're talking to some really sophisticated investor who's going to be putting in 6 or 7 figures, and they're going to have a clear idea of what they want, and they're going to understand how these corporate structures work and so on.
Okay, great. We have one last question in under the wire. Tame, hello. Hi. I have a question about the shows that flip union and fringes based on rates or based on scale. Okay, wait, I'm going to reread that again. So shows that flip union, the fringes are based on rates or based on scale. Do you even know that answer? That's a very, that's a good question. Might be something we have to look up and get back to you on, unless you know the answer.
You mean sort of what is the threshold for a show to be required to be covered under a SAG contract or under some other union contract?
I think what she may be asking is, do you get the fringes based on Your current rates are based on the rates are being paid or based on scale. So Mike, can you put a little more description of what you might be asking, although we have less than a minute? But we can definitely get information on that and get back to you and comment in the group for you so that you have more information.
Yeah, you can email me that in writing. I think would be the best idea. So you could give me whatever other details you want, and you can email that at cedgar@cedgarlaw.com.
Great. She says basically, if we pay someone $650 per day based on our budget, but it flips, is it possible for us to pay fringes based on that rate rather than the scale rate, which would be $725? Oh, yes. That
Okay.
makes sense. Yes. I
Yeah.
figured it was like IATSE or something related because that's usually what flips.
Yeah.
shows.
I mean, it depends on the union that we're talking about, and we need to look at the specifics of the union contract. And so, so I think you should email me about that, and we can talk about that a little bit more.
And let's put. Okay, that was weird. I'm going to put your email in the comment box for her.
Okay.
And then I guess that's kind of the end of all of this. We have gotten through our half hour. Great questions, you guys. Thanks for being so active and asking questions that made Chris really work today. It was good. Don't forget, though, that all of this said, Chris made Film Tracts for you so you don't have to always pay lawyers. You can get a subscription and get all the contracts you want, or you can pay per contract, and it's made by him. So the contracts are solid. But you can go to filmtracts.com and find out more, filmtracts.com. And then you can email him again at Cedgar, Cedgar is it Edgar at Cedgar Music?
Yeah, Cedgar@cedgarlaw.com.
Law. Okay, yeah. He has I told you, he's got a lot of personalities. I'm very confused all the time. All right, guys. Next week.